Hi everyone, welcome to my November trainee newsletter. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alexandra Conroy. I used to be a corporate lawyer and a partner in the city in London, and I now run my own business as a performance coach for lawyers and those of you still looking to get into the legal industry. If you want to know any more background about me, then feel free to take a look at the October newsletter where I talk a bit about myself. And also you can have a look at my website, which has lots of information about my background. But what I want to do now is really jump into the content of the newsletter for this week, which is handling the holidays. So when I was thinking about what to talk to you about this month, I really was thinking about my experience in private practice at this time of year. And pretty much without exception, this time of year was always extremely busy and pressurized time of year. And so I suspect that many of you are starting to go through that now, in particular if you're in a transactional seat, potentially in other seats as well, or certainly if you don't experience it now, you will in future seats or perhaps in this seat at a different time of year. So all of this content will be useful for you certainly in the future. And the goal of this video is really to help you think about not just sort of surviving this time of year, but really thriving and making the most of the opportunities that a busy period can bring in terms of experience and performance and impact that you will have on the team. So my goal is really to help you think about it in that sense. And so what I'm going to do is split the video into 3 short sections, each of which I think will be valuable in terms of helping your performance during these busy times. So the first one is physical health and prioritizing and protecting that, especially during these busy times. It can seem obvious or it can seem less of a priority when you're crazily busy, but it really is super important. I suppose I should say, in case it's not obvious, that I'm not a doctor. And so everything that I'm telling you is from my own personal experience or research or reading that I've done over the years myself to increase my own performance. And in terms of physical health, the first thing is sleep. And it's first because it's the most important, but unfortunately these days I also think it's the most undervalued element of health in society these days, and there is increasing research and awareness and commentary about the importance of sleep. We are still going through that idea that kind of grit and long hours and sleep when you're dead and bragging about all-nighters, where that's sort of really cool and accepted in society. And so I think there's sort of a fight against that and a realization that sleep is an integral part of keeping yourself healthy. Sleep is the opportunity your body has to regenerate itself physically, but also for your brain to process information, data, memories, so that you go into the next day with the energy you need, but also with the mental capacity to perform at the level that you guys need to perform at. And so it is extremely important to protect and prioritize your sleep. Now, of course, I say this in the full acceptance and realization that lawyers work long hours, and particularly during this season of your training contract, this time of year, it is likely unrealistic for you to strive to have the recommended 7 or 8 hours sleep a night. And so I'm not saying that that should be your goal during this period. What I'm saying is any additional sleep that you can work into your routine is going to be beneficial and valuable to you. So just be conscious and aware and think about things that you may deprioritize just during this season of your life so that you can prioritize sleep. And I wouldn't be so presumptuous as to tell you that you should be deprioritizing gym or family time, because those things may be very important for your mental well-being. But just think about it, because there may be some of those things that you can put aside just for this season so that you can prioritize your sleep. And I'm sure I can say with pretty a lot of confidence that you can prioritize sleep over, the latest episode of Game of Thrones, however good it may be, or spending half an hour flicking through Facebook or Instagram or whatever your social media drug of choice is. I'm pretty sure you can put those aside. And I say this because we're all guilty of it, and it's largely unconscious. 1 minute we're looking at Facebook for a quick notification, and the next minute, half an hour later, we've just spent half an hour looking at the latest cute cat videos or whatever it might be. So just be conscious of this and prioritize your sleep over these things. So the second category is exercise, and I will rephrase this to movement. If you can get good amount of exercise, then fantastic, but at a very baseline minimum, make sure you're getting up every hour, moving away from your desk, even if it's to walk down the corridor to speak to someone. If you can, incorporate some fresh air and some light. That will help you physically and emotionally, and will mean that you're able to refocus when you get back to your desk. So set a timer, and that should be your minimum baseline. And then finally, nutrition. I am not going to tell you what you should eat. There are other people who can do that much more effectively than me. So my only guidance here is beware of those circumstances which we've all experienced in this industry, where you've been working all the hours and it gets to another 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night in the office, and you realize that you haven't eaten anything all day. It's too late to go out and buy anything, too late for delivery, and so you end up relying on the leftover slice of pizza from someone else's delivery, topped up with the vending machine. I think it is fairly accepted these days that what you put in your body obviously has a long-term impact on health, but also impacts your energy levels in the moment and in the coming hours. So in order for you to keep at the performance levels that you'll need to be functioning at this time of year, I would just recommend you plan at the beginning of the day what and when you're going to eat, so that you're not coming against those circumstances at the end of the day where you're just left with whatever is available to you at 11 p.m. at night, which is never going to be good. So just plan. That's my guidance on that one. So those are the physical health aspects, and I would really recommend that you are aware of them at this time of year, because they will make a difference to your performance. And also, if you get into the habit of prioritizing these things now, it's going to set you up for your future career if you want longevity. So that's your physical health. Second element is really emotional and mental well-being. There are many things that we could talk about in this area, and I probably will do in future newsletters, but two things that I wanted to pick out here was firstly stress. So stress is obviously very prevalent in society and workplaces these days. And if you concentrate on the physical aspects that I just talked about, then all of the research shows you will be well on your way to learning how to manage stress, because those physical elements have a direct impact. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of put out there in this video was that stress is not necessarily a bad thing. As long as you're keeping it to manageable levels. Stress is there for a reason biologically in your body. If you're going through pressurized seasons of your life where you need to perform and you're working long hours, then stress enables you to pump the right hormones around your body so that you can perform, remain energized. And so it can be at manageable levels a positive influence on your work. And so I really want you to not think of it in necessarily a negative light, as it's is sometimes portrayed. It can be a good and positive thing, and sometimes, and there's various new research that shows this, how you think about stress and the anxiety you have about being stressed creates more stress and health issues. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Think about the value that it brings to you. Having said that, if you are aware that stress is tipping into the point where it's becoming unmanageable and it's having a negative impact on your health or your performance, then the best thing to do is to talk to someone about it and figure out a plan to manage it. If you think it's appropriate and it's really negatively impacting your performance, then you may want to talk to your supervisor about it and come up with a plan together to better manage it. If that's not appropriate or necessary, then speak to friends and family, speak to a professional. Stress is, everyone goes through it at some point. It's very manageable, and I'm all for bringing it into the conversation and awareness and just dealing with it. So please do speak to someone if you're struggling with stress. So that's the stress side of things. On the other side of things, I would encourage you to think about your mindset during these busy periods. One of the fantastic things and unique things about human beings is that we can think about our thoughts. And changing our thoughts leads to direct consequences in terms of our actions and our emotional landscape. And so, what I really encourage you is to be aware if you're slipping into the kind of victim mindset, and everyone does it, so it's not a, criticism. But if you're noticing thoughts coming up like, oh, this is so tough, I'm really not enjoying this, it's not fair that so-and-so is not having to work these hours, when will it end, any of these kind of things, you can't necessarily stop them from popping into your brain, because your brain is trying to protect you. But you can say, I notice it, and I'm not going to think that anymore. Instead, I'm going to think the positive, which is what an awesome opportunity this is to grab a huge amount of experience in a short period of time, to grab great experience, because everyone else, if you're busy, everyone else is going to be busy, and so you can take some good work from them and have the opportunity to do that. What an awesome experience to make a positive impact on the team. If you can prove yourself to be someone who remains positive and calm and performs well in these pressurized situations, then that is going to be a huge plus for you when it comes to qualification. So what a fantastic opportunity, which others who are not busy right now might not have the chance to take advantage of. So what an awesome opportunity for you. So really shift your mindset into that way of thinking, and it will have a direct impact in terms of how you show up, and therefore your performance, and also how you're feeling about yourself. So really think about your mindset. So that's the emotional side. And then finally, the last category for this topic is just some practical tips and advice. And there are loads of things we could talk about, but I just wanted to pick out a few to really help you get through this time. So the first one is planning, and this comes into the time management category, and so is a great skill to learn regardless of the time of year. But take 5 minutes at the beginning of your day to plan your day. The danger that I have seen for junior lawyers at this time of year is that mistakes can come into play when people are just firefighting and just like going straight into the day without thinking strategically about what they need to get done. And so things will suddenly become urgent when they didn't need to become urgent, or tasks will be forgotten because a million other things have been done first. And so just take 5 minutes to figure out what you're doing that day. Don't just write a list. Think about the urgency of each of the tasks, the importance of each of the tasks, what can maybe go down the list, and think about how long you're going to spend doing each task, and think about what you can delegate out at the beginning of the day that will mean it's 50% done by the time you need to come to it later on. So planning, super important. Secondly, which I've touched on, use the resources that are available to you. So what I'm talking about here is delegation. You will likely have a secretary available to you, or overnight secretaries that can get stuff done for you while you're working on other things, and you may also have paralegal availability. So the one word of caution is that I always give to trainees is just check with your supervisor what they think is appropriate delegation. Some supervisors will be cautious about delegation because they want you as a trainee to learn and have the learning up experience by doing the task yourself, which of course is very valid. But during this period, it may be appropriate for you to delegate, and it's a fantastic skill to learn. As a junior lawyer, you will really struggle if you get to sort of mid-level stage and you have not learned to delegate with ease. So it's a fantastic habit to get into now, and also at this time of year it's going to help you out. So use the resources that are available to you. And lastly, in terms of practical tips, and my clients and people who have worked with me will be aware of this bugbear that I have. Beware the myth of multitasking. Now, I know that you will have multiple things to do in one day, and I know that there will be things that will be out of your control in terms of priorities of those tasks and shifting priorities during the day. Your supervisor will ask you questions, the phone will ring, a meeting will get put in your diary, whatever. So you will, as part of your job, have to swap between things. But please do that in the full understanding that there is no such thing as multitasking. Your brain cannot focus consciously on analytical tasks more than one at a time, unless you're doing them both terribly. So what multitasking actually is switching from one task to another task, to another task, to another task, back to the first task. And every time you do that, you lose time. So of course, you're going to have to do that to a certain extent. That is the job. But what I want you to think about is the elements that are within your control, where you can focus on one task at a time and do that. So you may turn off your phone notifications, turn off your email pings, anything that is going to distract you from the task at hand. Of course, you will need to be responsive when things come up, so maybe set a 10-minute timer and then look at your email and then get back to the task at hand. But the things that you can control, focus on those. So that's my rant about multitasking. So those are the practical tips. And those really are the 3 frameworks, so physical health, emotional health, and practical things you can do, which will really help you thrive during this period. And I really encourage you to be aware of at the basic level and then try and incorporate. So that's it for the focus of this newsletter. I just wanted to deal with a question that I received. As you know, I'm trying to build in this kind of quick-fire questions. So I received a question from one of you about how to make the most impact as a first seat trainee, which is a fantastic question. And my response always to this question to new trainees is, you are not expected going into your first seat to have legal technical knowledge. You're expected to learn that stuff, but you're not expected to have it at the first seat. So what they're judging you on is potential. And so the main thing that you need to focus on during your first seat is your enthusiasm and your attitude. You need to always be oozing positivity and enthusiasm. You need to be asking good questions. You need to be putting your hand up when people want work to be done. Anything that you can do to show yourself as an enthusiastic person, do it. The second thing is professionalism. Now, this isn't something that will necessarily be picked up in a review, you are professional, but it will certainly be picked up if you act unprofessionally. So you need to dress professionally, you need to act professionally in firm events, client events, day-to-day office life, and you need to be on time and never late. That should be a baseline for you. And then finally, and this is probably pretty important too, you need to think every day, how today can I make my supervisor's life easier? And at this stage, it's going to be administrative things, most likely. So if there's a conference call, you need to have the dial in ready to go and in front of whoever's making the call before they have to, spend time looking for it. You need to have all of the relevant documents to hand and ready for them. On a day-to-day basis, whenever you're working on a matter, you should have access to all of the key documents within 2 minutes, whether it's hard copy or printing them out. Organized. If you're going for a coffee with your friends, and your supervisor likes coffee, ask them if they want one. See how they work and be a step ahead of them on this administrative stuff. And really take advantage of the human biases that exist. So this is confirmation bias, which is the unconscious bias that exists where people will look for details in day-to-day life which confirms a belief or a perception or an opinion that they have. So if you can create an opinion or a belief in your supervisor at the beginning of your seat that you are an enthusiastic person who makes their life easier, then throughout the rest of their seat, unbeknownst to them, they will be picking up on details of you that shows that you are enthusiastic and make their life easier. So it's a fantastic thing for you to take advantage of at the beginning of your seat and at the beginning of every seat. So how can you make their life easier is really key. So those are my top tips for making the most impact as a first seat trainee. So that's the end of the newsletter for this month. I hope you found it useful. If you want to delve into any of these things in more depth on a one-on-one basis, then please feel free to drop me a line at alex@alexandraconroy.co.uk or via my website, which is www.alexandraconroy.co.uk. Also, if you think this content will be useful for fellow trainees, graduates, friends, family, whoever, then please feel free to flick it onto them. But that's it for this month. Please have a fantastic month. Make the most of these opportunities if you're going through a busy time. And I will see you next month.